So we started this series a few weeks ago called My Name is Joseph, taken from the life of Joseph in the Old Testament of your Bible, the very first book, Genesis, because what we observe in this guy, Joseph, we get the opportunity to see a big chunk of his life and how God works in that. And that's why we named the series My Name is Joseph, because we recognize that God's working in our lives as well. We're covering this story one section of the story at a time. And in some ways, we miss the big picture of it by doing that. And in other ways, it feels like our life. Last week, we got the opportunity to see this guy, Joseph, who had been caught off guard after being put in charge of his dad's business. A big business, owned lots of land, owned lots of assets. But he was in business with his brothers, and they got jealous. They didn't like these dreams that he had. He probably should never told them. They decide to kill him and throw him in a pit. And then they get this idea, well, hey, might as well get some cash out of the deal. And they sell him to merchants that will trade him on the open market. You never see this coming, and all of a sudden your life has taken a crazy turn. What's fascinating about this guy is he keeps on turning a corner. I mean, when he gets to the next place in his life, he ends up in a key leader in Egypt's home, an official. And he does such a good job. And I mean, there's this piece of him doing a good job, but there's also God's hand upon his life. And he's just blessed. What he touches just turns to gold, and he does good. So this Egyptian official by the name of Potiphar puts him in charge of his household. And in the course of time, Potiphar's wife, Mrs. Potiphar, we call her here, notices Joseph. And she makes her moves on him. He resists them over and over. He's clear to give into that would be an offense to God, which is exactly what sin is. But eventually she turns on the heat, and he has to absolutely run. And then as he does so, she grabs his coat. And she blames him. Now all of a sudden, a guy trying to do what is right finds himself in prison. I ran across a quote this week by Dr. Tony Evans that I think sort of sums up what I want to say today. It says this: sometimes God lets you be in a situation that only he can fix so that you can see that he is the one who fixes it. Rest. He's got it. I'm going to end with those words, he's got it. That God's in charge, he sees it all. It's one of the reasons why the New Testament says, hey, the reason these stories are in the Old Testament, and so you can step back, you can see the big picture and see how God's been active in motion. So you can look at your life, which you're sitting here right now at this moment in time. You can't see the beginning. I don't remember when I was born, and I'm glad. And I obviously can't see what's going to happen at my death, and I'm glad. But I'm sitting here in this moment in time, and there's things that are on my mind. There are things that are weighing me down. There's things I'm trying to figure out. What do you do with that? And Paul says in the New Testament, God has put those things in your Bible so that you can read these stories and step back and go, oh, that's how God works. Like I can expect that God's going to work in that way in my life. So what we're going to say as we come out of this message today is God's got this. But stop for just a moment, because we are going to pick up right at the moment where he was thrown into prison last week. Where now he gets to the prison, and in the prison he's cared for by God. God's with him. And again, this guy, everything he touches turns to gold. Everyone around him sees it. They're like, this is a guy we're going to have in charge. And he's in charge of the prison now. That's how we ended the chapter 39, the message last week. And that's cool. This guy, he's gone through some hard stuff, and now he's on the other side of that, and he hits another hard thing, this woman, but he did the right thing, and now he's in jail unjustly. He didn't do anything. He's not guilty, and yet here he is, and yet he rises above that, and God's with him, and God blesses him, and he gets put in charge of that. I'm just going to say pause for just a moment, because let's be honest. Are you kidding me? We're going to be happy that God's with him and that God blesses everything he touches and that he's in charge. He's in prison. And this isn't round one. What are we up to now? Round 3, he's thrown in a pit. He's in Potiphar's house. Now he's in prison. You're like, can we stop? God, how many rounds do we have to go around? I tried to smile my way through the first time. I was happy that you were with me. I was happy you blessed me. Okay, I'm happy you're with me now. I'm happy you're blessed me now. But do we have to keep going through this? Again, back to the title of our message or our series, My Name is Joseph. Some of you are going, yeah, exactly my sentiment right now. I'm glad you're with me, God. I'm willing to look back on this story of how you worked, and I'm glad to see, God, you're with me. I'm glad to see that those who follow God and do it God's way have God's blessing on that. I'll take that blessing. But God, are you kidding me? We're going back around this circle again. We're in prison. Now what? You just stop and go, okay, how long has this been going on for this guy? How long has this been going on for you? You said, I only have one life to live. I only have so many hours in a day. I only have so many months left in my life. And I'm using it up how? In this, in this pit, in this, guy's house with this woman just messing with my head all day long. Now in another prison, yay, I'm in charge. Well, great. That'll improve my resume. I have new leadership experience in prison in Egypt. Yay. Some of you are going, yeah. Can I tell you my story? This is that dot in time that we're talking about where we say, my name is Joseph. Yes, God's with me. Yes, God's blessing. But where is this headed? I know, Pastor, you're going to say, yeah, God's got this. I'm struggling with that right now. Or maybe I go to something else that God said in Isaiah. Listen to these words, Isaiah 55. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. So let me just throw out a few what ifs. Is it possible that God has a plan in motion for your life and my life, that if I don't go through this moment, I can't get to that moment? Is it possible that God knows something about what I'm going through right now, that if I knew that, I'd be like, oh, I see how that works out. I have to, okay, it's good. Is it possible that God knows something, that if we knew that something, we'd be okay with going along with it? I'd love for you to read with me Genesis chapter 40. It's the rest of the story, and it's going to leave us hanging again this week. It's going to leave us in a place where this thing doesn't resolve, which I appreciate. There's something about reading the story through beginning to the end. And if you read this story out through the end, at the end you go, oh, I see why all that happened. But there's also something about just letting this thing hang every week where we can just say, yep, I get that. So I'm going to walk you through Genesis chapter 40. As we've said every week, God tells the story better than I do. I'm not going to retell the story when I'm done. So I'm just going to walk you through this. If you have a hard copy Bible, I'm a big hard copy Bible guy. To me, it's just, I can circle stuff and write in here. But those of you who don't have a hard copy Bible with you, you probably do have one of these with you. Most of you didn't forget one of these today. They have apps for these that say Bible, so just, you want to bring that up. But we're also going to put it on the screen, and if you just want to close your eyes and listen to the story and just let God tell you the story through his word, I'm just going to read it to you right now. Chapter 40, verse 1. Sometime after this, the cupbearer of the king of Egypt, and just one off, the cupbearer was the guy that he would taste the food before the king would taste the food, and everyone stands back and watches, waits to see if he dies. If he doesn't die, then the king can go ahead and eat dinner. So that's this guy. He takes care of all the utensils and makes sure everything's safe. This is a national security dude. This is the Secret Service just making sure that the king is safe. So that's a cupbearer dude. So the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker, baking was a big deal in that time. Bread, making awesome bread was huge in that time. This guy was a phenomenal baker. I don't know that, but I just made that up. Says they committed an offense against their lord, the king of Egypt, and Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard in prison where Joseph was confined. We don't know what they did, but I have a feeling someone got really sick. Yeah. Maybe someone died. I don't know. I have a feeling something bad happened. It's not good. And they get thrown in prison. By the way, just so happens it happens to be in the prison where Joseph was confined. We know now this is not oh, by the way, but it sort of feels like an oh, by the way in the story. I ask you to keep in mind there are things going on in your life that just seem like a minor little detail in the story of your life. But maybe it's not. I'm going to remind you, sometimes it feels like some things just happen chance. In fact, I think most of our lives we think that, well, it just was chance that I happened to run into this person, happened this was here, this was there. But I think there's a whole lot less chance than what we realize. Keep going. The captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with them, and he attended them. They continued for some time in custody. And one night they both dreamed. The cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in prison, each had their own dream, each dream with its own interpretation. So when Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were troubled. So he asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in custody in his master's house, "Why are your faces so downcast today?" They said to him, "Man, we've had some dreams. There's no one to interpret them." Joseph said to them, "Do not the interpretations belong to God? Please tell them to me." So the chief cupbearer told him his dream, Joseph, and said to him, "In my dream there was a vine before me, and on the vine there were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand. I took the grapes, I pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. Then Joseph said to him, this is its interpretation. 3 branches are 3 days. 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office. And you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as formerly you were when you were his cupbearer. Hey, remember me when it's well with you? Please do me the kindness to mention to the Pharaoh, and so get me out of this house. I was indeed stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me into the pit. Now when the baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he says to Joseph, I also had a dream. And in the there were 3 cake baskets on my head. In the uppermost basket were all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh. But the birds were eating it out of the basket on my head. And Joseph answered and said, okay, this is its interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. And in 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on a tree. And the birds will eat the flesh from you. On the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, I love how scripture gives details like this. He made a feast for all of his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet, the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. To me, there's just something about that last phrase that feels helpless and discouraging. I mean, think about it for a minute. This guy passed the test with Mrs. Potiphar. God had to be pleased. He did the right thing. He ran. He ends up in a bad situation, but God has a plan. And he works that plan out. But they forget him. There's a little detail in all this that we read that I think is important. It says he's walking around one morning and he comes across these 2 guys, the cupbearer and the baker. He sees they're not doing well. He says, you okay? They're like, yeah, no, we're not. I love when those people that can actually truly see that you're hurting. Evidently, Joseph, for being a guy who's in charge in this good spot, he cares. He sees something's not right. And as he speaks with them, he finds, they're not doing well. And his comment to them is, so you're telling me the issue is this dream you have last night? Yeah, it's a problem. He says, well, you know, God's the God of dreams. And that may not seem like a really big deal, except that he's talking to people that don't believe in his God, the one true God. They believe in these little gods that are made up, these idols and this kind of thing. I mean, this is offensive. This is hate speech. Wait a minute, you're not allowed to talk about that. You're in our territory. You're in our country now. You do things our way here. But smoothly and calmly and confidently, not weird, just says, you know, God's the God of dreams and he'll give me that interpretation. And they're like, yeah, we want to know. And I'm convinced that oftentimes we hold back because we're told that we're in a foreign land, that we're not allowed to talk about the one true God that we believe in, that we know is truth. And we're just like, I don't know if I ought to talk about that here. I don't know if I ought to talk about this in your home. I don't know if I ought to talk like that to you because you have a different belief system. Yeah, but they're asking. They're hurting. You just poured into their life for a moment and they're going, talk to me. I believe that people right now especially are really hungering for something that they can grab onto, that they sense has moorings, that is anchored in something that is bigger than whatever our mindset is right now, that it's anchored in truth. And I would just encourage each of you, do not hesitate to use the name of the one true God, of Jesus, in your conversations. They may not respond. If so, you just roll right on. But sometimes it'll be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What are you saying? Give me more information. Because they're looking for it. They're not finding it anywhere else. And you say, yes, I have information. And that's when Joseph interprets their dreams and speaks to them. I pause and I think for a moment. Because when I read this, I'm like, dreams. Didn't this all start out with 2 dreams? And because he speaks of that dream back then, he's where he's at today. Like if he hadn't had those 2 dreams, he isn't in this prison today. If he doesn't say anything about those 2 dreams back there with his dad and his brothers, he's not in prison here today. It's a whole different story. But he did, and now 2 guys in front of me were dreams. There's a part of me when I read this, like, why dreams again? And I wrote down in my notes, is it possible that God has perfectly tailored my life and my experiences to get me ready for this day? I want to push back against it and go, stop it. This is not right. The last time I went through this, everything went downhill. Not saying anything this time. I learned the hard way. I'm not stepping into this time, and yet God says, I have prepared you for this moment. I have allowed you to go through what you've gone through, and we've come down this path. Will you trust in my plan? I'm setting this up for you. I also thought, that when that baker says, hey, you brought a good word to the cupbearer, maybe he'll bring a good word to me. I'm liking this. I'm liking happy thoughts. What do you do when everyone's looking for happy thoughts and you have to say something that's not a happy thought? And he's found out the hard way that when you bring bad news, you end up in a pit, you get sold, and bad things ensue. And yet, he's a guy that still brings the truth. The cupbearer, when this whole thing comes together, the baker ends up getting hanged, and the cupbearer has his job back, and he's back in Pharaoh's presence. Joseph had talked with him about this. He was so sure his dream was true and that the interpretation was true that he says, and when this happens, get me out of here. I'm so done with this reality that I've been going through. You're my ticket out of here. And it's the ending that is so harsh that leaves us hanging when we read those words. And he forgets him in jail. Are you kidding me? And most of us have a story of that person we've poured into, that person we've done well by, that person that we have cared about. And then later on, when we need them, they're nowhere to be found. And there's a anger and there's a bitterness that wells up within us over that. And some of you feel that today. In verses 14 and 15, he says, only remember me when it is well with you. Please do me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh. And so get me out of this house, for I was indeed stolen out of the land of the Hebrews. And here also I have done nothing that they should put me in this pit. And so he's in this prison. And from what we can tell, after this cupbearer goes back and gets his job back, he's probably there at least 2 more years. I don't know about you, but there's just something inside of me that says 2 more years. And there's someone in the back row raising their hand saying, Pastor, try 30 years. Someone else says, I have you beat. And it hasn't resolved. It hasn't been fixed. What do you do with that? You're sitting staring at something that's going on in your life and you go, that is so hard, and I don't care what happens, it will never change in my lifetime. I'm 100% sure of it. The realities are clear to me. It can't change in my lifetime. It's not how I began. It was not the dream I had. And it's certainly not the trajectory that I wanted. And here I am staring at it. It can't change. So yeah, I'm glad 2 years later, Joseph will get out. I don't think, outside of some crazy thing where God just changes the natural rules of the universe, that's not happening. And I agree. What do you do with that? By the way, how you exit one season in life greatly determines how you enter the next. Joseph's in a spot where everything looks like this ought to wrap up. He's going to hang out there for 2 more years. You just lose your mind at that point? Do you just give up? Do you finally curse God? Do you finally say, yeah, I'm just going to do this my own way? It's like, I want a get out of jail free card. By the way, did you get a get out of jail free card on your way in here today? Did you get one of those? Grab that right now. Take a look at that. I was thinking about this week, and I was thinking of these old Monopoly cards. So our team did a really nice job at making these up for you. And it just feels like to me, I mentioned earlier, what caught me when I looked at this Monopoly card, because I thought about this, get out of jail free. The thought that was on my mind about a guy like Joseph that was forgotten in prison was like, he wants a get out of jail free card. When I looked this up, this old Monopoly card, I saw in the top left-hand corner here this word chance. You know, there's just a given point in life where it's like, I just want to get out of this reality, whatever I have to do right now. You know, it's like when your computer goes into that, spinning wheel of death or whatever. I don't know about you, I'm pressing all sorts of combinations of buttons, and I finally, I'm just pressing that one button. If you hold it down long enough, it just turns off and reboots. It's like whatever. And I think some of us get to this place in my life where it's like, I'm just going to take the chance right now. I'm bailing from this. And a lot of people give you excuses for that. You say, hey, in a time of grief, this is what happens 90% of the time. You're like, yeah, I guess that's what's happening to me. Oh, when you feel these emotions, you owe yourself to do this to you. And so by chance, you throw the get out of jail card free. It's why there's so many people that I have conversations with and they begin to tell me about addictions they're dealing with because they turned to the bottle or they turned to gambling. And they said, I'm just going to check out of this situation. It's why marriages fall apart after extremely tense moments, because it's like, I'm just going to throw the get out of jail card. I'm going to take a chance, but I can't hang here any longer. And we short circuit God's plan. That's why I wrote on the other side, the main thought that we have for this message. I want you to hear this. I can live by chance and see everything as a chance in my life, or I can live my life saying, God's got this. We just go, oh, it's just a chance that happened. It was just, that was a fluke accident. Oh, I never saw them acting like this, and it was their emotional thing. It just happened by chance, and so I responded by chance. Or I can go, wait a minute, God knew that was going to happen. God's got this. And we wrote in the middle of this card may be kept to remind me that God's got this. And we wrote this little verse down at the bottom, Philippians 1:6. He who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. As I mentioned earlier, it may not even be in this lifetime. You may not ever see this thing come together. But the point of these messages, why we say my name is Joseph, to stand back and see how God works it all out and how he's working it in your life. You go, well, that's awfully global. It's sort of big picture. So let's go a little bit smaller, because you might be thinking life is just a series of chances. Most things are not God things. We're looking for this big God thing that would fix everything, and most of us would say that didn't happen. I think there's something that most of us are missing in everyday life, is that God is very active and involved in every little detail of our lives. We can look back at that story and say, oh, it just so happened those two guys were thrown into a prison that Joseph was in. Or we can say that God knew very well where Joseph needed to be at that time. And while it looked absolutely untenable to Joseph, to God, he knew in order, and we're going to find out in a couple weeks how this story ends, in order to save lots and lots and lots of people, a whole nation, I need to have Joseph right there at that time. And I have prepared him. And he's gone through some horrific things. You see how the mind is changing? And I'm seeing this through God's eyes. We don't understand. We don't get it. It's not finished yet. He who began a good work in me. And we're going to spend our lives trying to decide, is what's going on around me chance? And then I'm going to respond by throwing this down in chance? Or does God got this? Here's how I'd encourage you to start thinking if you want to go the God's got this route. Start with something really small. Put your head on a swivel and say, what's God doing? I'm going to promise you that God's working all the way around you. If you're a child of God, if you love Jesus, if you are seeking his face, there's stuff going on all around you that he's actively involved in. I am convinced that the spiritual world is so much bigger than the physical world. We've just gotten so myopic on a physical world, we've missed the spiritual world. My wife and I had something happen to us just 2 days ago. It's the smallest, tiniest little thing. I'm not even going to tell you what it was, because you'd be like, that's God? Seriously. Goofy little thing. And it was funny because almost at the same time, both of us like, oh, weird. I think God cared about that. And as we sort of like pulled back and looked at it more, we're like, wait a minute. I think he was involved in this too. I got to tell you, it increased our faith this weekend to see God involved in just tiny little things in our lives. And the two of us just sort of, I don't know, it just made us happy all weekend long. It was like we saw where God was involved. Not chance. Honestly, it looked like chance. I made a quick last-minute turn. It just felt totally like chance. But it wasn't. Would you put your head on a swivel? Start looking around saying, where are you working, God? Would you like to see yourself being taken on a field trip by God the rest of this day? Let's just focus in on today. Like, okay, God's taking me on a field trip today. Everything that happens for the rest of the day, say, God, I'm looking for you. Would you show yourself? We can go to the chance program, or we can say, God's got this. And all of a sudden we see a God who we just call out on his name, and he is in charge of everything. He's sovereign, he loves you, and he's working it out. And you are a privileged person today that he has prepared you very specially for something he has. You can bail right now. You can walk from that marriage. You can jump into that addiction. You can quit that job. You can flip that person off going out of the parking lot, or you can just say, no, God's actively involved, and I'm going to let him do his thing. Jesus, for my friends in this room, we have a choice right now, and I pray that we would begin to re-see how we look at the world, and that you, Jesus, would have your way in our hearts and our minds right now. I pray for each person that's been trying to just sort of jump out of the realities of their life and fix things themselves and heal things themselves, or run from things or cancel things. Lord, would you heal those addictions? Would you heal those relationships? We let you even see that we're even in this room today, not by chance, not just by the fact we show up to church every week, but that you brought us to this room for this message for a very real purpose. And we're just going to right now just call it out. Jesus, it's all about you. You get the glory. It's in your name we pray, amen.